Previously, I shared how silence became the language between me and my son, how I poured my heart into a letter, begging only for an answer, and received nothing in return. I told you how that silence hollowed me out, until, unexpectedly, life forced us back into each other's paths. This part of the story is the hardest to tell, because it wasn't love, or forgiveness, or a sudden change of heart that brought us face to face again. It was something else entirely. It was illness. I remember the day clearly. I had been feeling weak for weeks, a heaviness in my chest that wouldn't leave. I told myself it was just age, just fatigue. But one morning, as I tried to rise from bed, my body betrayed me. My legs trembled, my breath came shallow, and darkness swept across my vision. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed, machines humming quietly around me. A nurse spoke softly, telling me I had suffered a collapse. My heart wasn't as strong as it once had been. I listened in silence, nodding, though inside I felt strangely calm. Perhaps because, in that moment, I thought, if this is how it ends, maybe it's easier than the ache I've been living with. Then the door opened, and there he was. My son. For a heartbeat, I thought I was dreaming. His face looked tired, older, but it was him. The boy I had carried, the man I had lost. He stood frozen at the doorway, his eyes darting around the room as though unsure whether he belonged there. "Mom," he whispered. The sound of that word broke something open in me. It had been so long since I'd heard it spoken with warmth. My throat tightened, and tears stung my eyes. "You came," I whispered back. He stepped closer, hesitating, then sat at the edge of the bed. His hands fidgeted in his lap. "The hospital called. I didn't know." His voice cracked, and for the first time in years, I saw real emotion flicker across his face. I reached for his hand. He flinched at first, then let me hold it. My fingers, frail and trembling, curled around his. "I thought you had forgotten me," I said softly. His eyes dropped. "I never forgot." Those words, so simple, carried the weight of years. My chest ached, not just from illness, but from the hope I had buried so long ago. But then, as quickly as hope flickered, it dimmed again. Because I saw something else in his eyes. Fear. Not fear of me, but of what would happen when he left that hospital room. "She doesn't know I'm here," he admitted. His voice was quiet, filled with guilt. "If she knew..." The sentence trailed off, but I understood. The same wall stood between us, even here, in the sterile light of a hospital room. I squeezed his hand, though my strength was weak. "I don't care who knows. All I care about is this moment, that you're here, that you still call me Mom." For a brief while we sat in silence, not the heavy silence of distance, but the fragile silence of presence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't in years, peace. But I also knew it couldn't last. He was here because of crisis, not choice. And when I left this hospital, would he still be by my side? Or would he return to the world where I didn't exist? In the hospital, time moved differently. The ticking clock on the wall seemed louder than anywhere else, each second a reminder of how fragile life had become. Nurses came and went, checking machines, adjusting wires, but my eyes were always fixed on him. My son, sitting by the window, his face caught between shadows and light. For the first time in years, he was near me. I could study the curve of his shoulders, the way his hair fell the same way it did when he was a boy. I wanted to reach out, to tuck a stray lock behind his ear like I used to, but I held back. He wasn't mine anymore, not fully, and I was terrified of pushing him away again. He visited in the evenings, after work. Sometimes he brought me fruit, sometimes magazines he thought I'd like. The gifts were small, but to me they were treasures, proof that I still existed in his world, even if only in the quiet corners. But there was always a weight in the air. I saw it in his eyes when his phone buzzed with a message he didn't want me to see. I saw it in the way his smile faltered whenever I asked, "Does she know you're here?" He never answered directly. Sometimes he said, "It's complicated." Other times, he simply looked away, his silence sharper than words. I knew the truth, of course. He was living in two worlds, one where I was his mother, frail but still holding on, and another where I was nothing more than an unwanted shadow. One evening, as he prepared to leave, I couldn't stop myself. My hand caught his wrist, fragile but firm. "Please," I whispered, "don't disappear again, not like before. I can't bear it." He froze, his eyes glistening. "Mom, I'm trying, but you don't understand." "Then help me understand," I said, my voice trembling. "Why does she hate me so much? What did I do?" His lips parted, then closed again. He looked at the floor, shoulders tense. For a long time, there was only silence. Finally, he said, "It's not about what you did. It's about what she wants. And she doesn't want me torn between two families." I stared at him, my heart twisting. "But I'm not another family. I'm your mother." His eyes filled with tears, and in that moment, I saw the boy he once was. The boy who clung to me during thunderstorms. The boy who promised I'd always be his home. But that boy was trapped inside a man bound by someone else's rules. He pulled his hand free gently, almost apologetically. "I'll be back tomorrow." And he was. Every day for a week, he came, sitting by my side, talking in hushed tones, as though afraid the walls themselves might betray him. We spoke of small things, the weather, his work, old memories that slipped through like rays of sunlight. For those brief hours, I felt alive again. But then, one evening, he didn't come. I stared at the door, waiting, listening for his footsteps. Hours passed. A nurse came in and told me visiting hours were nearly over. My chest tightened. I whispered, "He'll come. He always comes." But the door stayed shut. The next day, he arrived late, his face drawn, his eyes heavy. I knew before he said a word. "She found out," he murmured, sitting heavily in the chair. My heart sank. "And?" "She's angry. She doesn't understand why I've been here so much. She thinks I'm choosing you over her." His voice cracked on the last words. I reached for his hand, though my own trembled. "And what do you think?" He looked at me, torn open by guilt and fear. "I don't know anymore." I squeezed his hand gently, my voice soft but steady. "Then let me help you remember. You are my son. You are my only family. And love, real love, doesn't force you to erase the people who raised you. It carries them with you." Tears welled in his eyes, but he said nothing. The silence pressed between us, heavy, suffocating, and in that silence, I felt the truth settling like a stone in my chest. I was fighting not just for his love, but against a force stronger than I had ever imagined. The doctors spoke gently, but I heard the truth in their words. My heart was weaker than they had hoped, my body more fragile than even I had admitted. They talked of treatments, of medicines to prolong my time. But when I lay alone at night, staring at the pale hospital ceiling, I knew. My days were numbered. Oddly, there was no fear, only sorrow. Not for myself, but for him. For the boy who once ran to me with scraped knees, who once whispered, "Don't ever leave me, Mama." And for the man he had become, torn between duty and love, afraid of losing what he had, afraid of facing what he owed. I realized then that I couldn't leave this world without telling him everything, every truth I had swallowed, every word I had held back in fear of pushing him further away. So I asked the nurse for paper. With trembling hands, I began to write. The words spilled from me slowly, like drops of water from a broken faucet. "My dearest son," I began, "from the moment I first held you in my arms, you became my reason to live. Every sacrifice I made with love. Every hardship I endured with joy because it was for you." I told him of my pride, of the way his laughter had been my favorite sound in the world. I reminded him of our nights during storms, of the bike rides, of the promises I whispered when he was small. And then carefully, I told him of the pain I had carried. of the empty nights, the closed doors, the silence that had swallowed me whole. "But please, my child," I wrote, "do not carry guilt when I am gone. I do not want your heart to be heavy with regrets. I want you to live, to love, to find joy. Remember me not as the woman you turned away from, but as the mother who never stopped loving you, not for a single moment." Tears blurred the ink as I wrote the final lines. "If you remember nothing else, remember this: I forgive you, always, and I will always love you, even when I am no longer here." When I finished, my hand ached, but my heart felt lighter. I sealed the letter, pressing it to my lips before placing it in the drawer by my bed. That night, when he came to visit, I studied him quietly. He looked tired, worn down, his eyes shadowed. Yet when he smiled faintly, I caught a glimpse of the boy I once knew. I wanted to hand him the letter right then, to press it into his hands, but I didn't. Not yet. Some part of me hoped I might still have time, still have days to speak the words aloud instead of leaving them on paper. As he sat by my bed, we spoke of simple things. He asked if I needed anything, if the food was tolerable, if the nurses were kind. I answered, but inside I wanted to shout, "I don't need food, I don't need comfort, I need you, I need my son back." But the words stayed in my chest, heavy, unsaid. When he left that evening, I watched him go, a shadow disappearing through the doorway. I wondered if he would return tomorrow, or if tonight had been the last time I would see him. The uncertainty gnawed at me, a quiet ache that no medicine could dull. In the stillness that followed, I whispered into the dark, "Please, don't let me leave this world without hearing you call me Mom one last time." And deep down, I knew the end was close. The final days blurred together. Nurses moved quietly through the room, adjusting monitors, whispering words I barely heard. My body felt heavier with each sunrise, but my mind clung to one thought. Would he come back in time? The letter sat in the drawer beside me, sealed and waiting. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined him opening it, imagined his hands trembling as he read the words I had poured my life into. I prayed he wouldn't find it too late, and then, one evening, he returned. His face was pale, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He sat down heavily by my side, taking my frail hand in both of his. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence was different this time, not sharp, not heavy, but tender. It was the silence of two souls who knew words were no longer enough. At last, he whispered, "Mom." That single word was enough. My eyes filled with tears, my heart swelling against its own weakness. "I'm here," I whispered back. He lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry. For everything. For the years. For the silence. For letting her come between us. I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to fight." My trembling fingers brushed his cheek, the same way I had when he was a child. "You don't need to fight anymore. All I ever wanted was this moment, to know I still lived in your heart." We sat together in the fading light, his hand clutching mine as if afraid to let go. I wanted to tell him everything then, every thought, every memory. But my strength was slipping, my breath growing shallow. So instead, I whispered the only words that mattered. "I forgive you, and I love you." His tears fell onto my hand, warm and heavy. "I love you too, Mom. Always." That was the last thing I heard before sleep carried me away. He found the letter the next morning. The nurses told me later how he sat in the chair by my bed, the letter trembling in his hands, reading through blurred eyes. How he read it once, twice, 3 times, clutching it as though it were my voice, my presence, my soul. Neighbors told me they saw him at my house weeks later, sitting on the porch steps with the letter folded neatly in his hands, staring at the horizon for hours. Perhaps he was remembering, perhaps he was mourning, or perhaps, at last, he was listening to the voice he had tried for so long to silence. And now, dear listener, I turn to you. Tell me in the comments, What do you think my son felt when he finally read those words? Do you believe forgiveness can heal wounds that years of silence have carved? Or are some losses too deep to ever mend? Your words matter more than you know, because in sharing them, you carry my story forward, and perhaps, somewhere, another mother, another son, will hear them and choose differently. This was my story, a story of love, of loss, of silence, and of forgiveness. And if you have stayed with me until the very end, then I ask you gently, don't forget to cherish the voices still in your life. Don't let silence grow where love could still live.